Hello and welcome to Dice Demons. I'm Emma, and in this video I want to talk a little bit more about the whole thing about gatekeeping and hate in our hobby. I recently posted a video about how I don't think gatekeeping has any place in our hobby and how we should all strive to have a community where we can all thrive and where we have like diversity and inclusivity and so on. And first of all, I'd like to say, thank you to everyone who wrote in the comments and responded and shared the video and so on. It was really great to see that so many people were supportive of the message, and I got a lot of really kind feedback, and I definitely appreciate that a lot. I also did get quite a number of comments along the lines of, well, if you get hateful messages, why don't you just delete them and block them and ignore it and just move on? Why even give them time? Why even sort of give them attention for what they are doing? Just ignore it. And I do think that it's a valid point. You could definitely just block and ignore and move on and just not worry about it anymore. But there is also another side to it which I would like to address in this video, and I would like to explain why I think it's important to speak about these things. So the thing is that when you get hateful comments and people saying nasty things about you or your painting, for me at least, it comes in sort of different categories. Some people are just writing stuff like, I don't like the way you paint your models, which is, that's fine. I guess it doesn't really affect me. If someone doesn't like what I painted, that's their prerogative. They can think whatever they want to think about what I'm painting, and it doesn't really hurt me. I can sort of shrug it off. The other kinds of comments, however, are a little bit more difficult to just ignore or feel like, oh, I don't really care about that. They can write whatever. And that's when they start writing things that are hurtful about who I am, and also, encourage me to, I've had people who encouraged me to make sure that I was no longer living here on this planet, and people who have written that, once, that they basically thought that it would be okay to kill every single gay person in Europe, for instance, and as I'm a lesbian, that is, it's sort of a threat, but I'm not scared, but I don't think it's something that I can just easily ignore. And I'll tell you why I don't think the default reaction to getting hatred should just be block and ignore, even though, of course, if you want to do that, that's totally up to you, and I'm not criticizing doing that because I do that myself at some point, but I don't think you have to do that. I don't think you have to feel like, oh, this is something I just need to ignore it, and if I can't do that, if it really gets to me, then I should deal with that alone. And I'd like to give sort of a story. It has nothing really. It has a little bit to do with wargaming, but not much. So you see, I'm autistic and I have ADHD, which I have spoken about here on this channel before. And I was only diagnosed when I was 33, and so I was an adult, and I had lived my entire life not knowing why I was different and why I just couldn't seem to do the things other people found so easy. I just didn't know why I had trouble with keeping up with my homework, and why I had why my home was always messy, and why I couldn't find out how to pay my bills and return my library books, and why I was so exhausted after going to school or going to work and all sorts of things. And so the only explanation I really had for why I couldn't do all those things that normal, adult people could do was that there was something wrong with me. I had to be lazy, I was stupid, I was I was just didn't have enough guts to pull myself together, basically. And that's a very negative way of looking at yourself, and that obviously affects how you view yourself. I think that's quite self-explanatory. So when I got the diagnosis at 33, I had two sort of emotions that weren't quite that were hard to get a grip on, because one of the emotions was I felt a lot of relief. I felt finally I have an explanation. Finally I know what's up, and I can perhaps even take steps to improve my life and make sure that some of the things that are difficult, perhaps I can put in perhaps I can put systems in place that'll make it easier. And at least now I know that it's not just because I'm lazy, right? Because up until then I had really thought that I had to be so lazy and so scatterbrained that sometimes it felt like it was a crime. When I was finishing university, I had to write my master's thesis, and it's I studied religion, and I wrote about ancient Christianity and early Christianity, and I had translated a bunch of text from Latin to Danish, and it was a whole big thing. And I had written 75 pages, and I knew that it was quite good. I thought. 1 month before I had to submit the paper, and this was the final exam. This was the sort of the pinnacle of the university degree. I had to write to a secretary from the university and tell him or her what the title of my thesis was. At that point, I had written the entire thing. I had checked it for spelling mistakes and grammatical mistakes, and I had printed it out, and it was ready to go. And I definitely knew what the title was, and I couldn't write that mail, because when I went to I didn't have the mail address that I was supposed to send the title to. And when I went to the university webpage, it was a little bit difficult to actually find out who I was supposed to send it to, and there were multiple mail addresses that might be relevant, but I wasn't quite sure. And so I ended up not doing it, which meant that I was about to fail my master's degree. After putting in all the work of getting it, and after putting in all the work of actually writing the whole thesis, I was about to fail because I didn't write a single email, which just had to contain the message sort of dear so and so, the title of my thesis is such and such. Best regards, Emma Svensson, and that was basically it. And I couldn't bring myself to do it, and I couldn't understand why, and it was a whole big deal, and I had to write to the examination office and get them to excuse me from it, and they were like, that seems really stupid and lazy, why haven't you just written that mail, right? And so it ended well. I ended up getting my master's degree and all as well, but it was just one of those things where I felt disgusted with myself, basically. And here comes the thing with the whole what has this to do with hate and gatekeeping in wargaming. So when I got the diagnosis, as I said, a lot of relief, but also at the same time I actually felt an intense sense of shame. I was just ashamed, and some of it had to do, I think, with the stigma surrounding mental health issues, psychiatric diagnosis, and so on. But also because I was like, what do I tell people? A lot of people might have viewed me as a competent person. Would that opinion change? Some people might start to feel sorry for me, which I didn't want them to do. And also I was really, really worried that people would say, well, are you sure? I mean, hasn't there been sort of like an inflation with those types of diagnoses? Aren't you just, I mean, everyone's a little bit autistic, or everyone's a little bit ADHD, aren't they? So, I mean, it's not that bad, right? So I had this huge feeling of shame, and I thought, well, I don't have to tell anyone. It's private, right? I mean, there's a difference between private and public, and there is a difference between feeling this is private and feeling ashamed. But it just dawned on me that I was actually feeling ashamed and not keeping it to myself just because I, genuinely thought this is just something personal. I don't want to share it with everyone. So eventually, after I had the diagnosis for about 2 years or so, I decided to come out as autistic and as ADHD as well. And I knew from experience since coming out as a lesbian many years ago that it would probably be, I would feel really happy and really, really relieved, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders after I had done so. And so I actually decided to come out through a video that I made here on this channel, I think about 2 years ago, where I talked about 10 things I love about being an autistic wargamer. And I thought that was a nice way of doing it because it was sort of informational and it was like positive and hobby focused. And so I just did that video and I put it on all over my social media. And so I thought, well, now everyone knows, because obviously I had told my closest relatives and friends about this, but everyone else didn't know anything about it. And it was really well received and I was so happy. And that brings me to the whole thing with gatekeeping and getting nasty comments and hateful messages, is that if it makes you feel ashamed of yourself, if it makes you feel belittled, if it makes you feel alone, you don't have to keep it private if you don't want to. If you want to, if you just get some nasty comments and you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this, I'll just delete and block, and you're fine with that, I mean, that's totally okay. I mean, that's completely valid. But if you feel this actually gets to me, I actually feel a little bit ashamed, I feel hesitant, do I even want to take part in the community anymore? Is there even a space for me here in this hobby? I think it is completely valid and legitimate and okay to share these experiences with other people in the hobby community. So I think if you are on the receiving end of some nastiness and you feel like I want to reach out, I need support from the community, by all means do so. I don't think anyone should be expected to keep silent about something that might make them feel ashamed, and particularly not, I mean, this is a hobby space, this is a hobby community. Everyone should just be here for, with the purpose of having a good time. And if you can't do that because other people are being unkind to you, and you feel like you're not allowed to reach out to the community because you are afraid people will say, well, why don't you just block and delete? Well, I don't think that, I think we should be a little bit more open to people having the need to share these experiences, having the need to reach out to the community and ask for support. I mean, we can all appreciate, a beautifully painted model. We're more than willing to give it a like and write a comment. Oh, that looks awesome. That looks great. That's amazing. What colors are you using? And I think it should be just as valid to post a message saying, you know what, I have been getting some really hurtful messages surrounding the hobby in lately. Could you please, just let me know that that it's okay. I'm here in the community, that I am valued, that I'm appreciated, and I just think that would be also a really nice way to go. If it's not automatic, if you see someone saying, "Oh, I received something that hurt me," that you don't just immediately jump to the conclusion, "Oh, you should just block and delete," because sometimes even if you block and delete, it still lingers, it still stays with you, and it can make you feel ashamed. And the thing about shame is that shame thrives in silence. And so if we stop expecting people to be silent about abuse or about nasty stuff and negativity, if we actually start encouraging people to share and be open about this, then we are taking the first steps to erasing the shame about it. And I don't think shame should have any place in this hobby community, especially not for people who are just talking about their experiences with the hobby, experiences with gaming or painting or anything. I think this should be a place where we can all encourage each other and also support each other when things get a little bit more rough. So yeah, that was my take on it. If you get something nasty in your inbox and you think, I just want to block and delete, go ahead. But if you feel like I actually need to reach out to the community and let them know what happened so I don't feel alone and don't feel ashamed, I think that is just as valid as well. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And as always, when we are talking about stuff like this that might be a little bit more sensitive and people might actually be really hurt by something like this, I hope you will be a little bit mindful about what you write and how you write it. So I look forward to hearing your comments and your takes on this, and just as long as you perhaps try to remember to be kind both to yourself, to the community at large, and perhaps even to me as well. So thank you so much for watching this one, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!